A very big hello and good afternoon, all the champs and all the techies. Hope you are doing good, right? So let's quickly get started with Spring Framework, and we'll start with the part one of Spring today. And before we move to Spring Boot, I think it's better if we could know some basics related to Spring, right? And then we'll quickly jump into Spring Boot, and we'll start Spring Framework, right, which is meant for dependency injection. We are going to start it with NetBeans and then slowly move to the Spring suite, right? So let's get started and see what basically the Spring framework is. Spring is famous for dependency injection. Now, what dependency injection is? What do you mean by dependency injection? For example, let me go ahead with a normal application. Let's say any application, any core Java application, because we have to see we have to see an example, right? Let me see that example. Let me check it somewhere in Java application. Right. Okay. So now we have this public static void main here. So let's go ahead and check the example right here. Okay. Fine. Or let's go to paint and see first, right? For example, if we say we have two classes, right? So we have a drawing application. We have one application known as drawing application, and drawing application has two functions, right? Let's say about or it has two classes first. So let us make a class. It has a class circle, all right, and another class is triangle. Alright, so we have two classes. One is circle class, another is triangle class, right? So class, basic class has two methods right here, draw, and because we draw a circle and we can also draw a triangle, right? So that means the draw method is here also and the draw method is here also. Alright, and if I have to call it in the application class, right? For example, if we have an application class, so I will call triangle, right? T is equivalent to new triangle, right? So this is what we will call, and if you want to draw, right, you can say T dot draw. So this is what we do, and in case we have to call this class circle, so I can say circle, right, and let's call this C is equivalent to new circle, right? So this object creation is problem, right? So then we are dependent on objects, right? We have to create an object and then draw the method, and we have many different things that we'll have to learn and take care of. So now we will not be handling only basic web application development, right? We'll have to look and handle complex web applications as well. And Spring is designed to handle complex applications, and Spring makes web application development very fast, right? So first we'll learn the basics of Spring and then quickly move to Spring Boot and see how those RESTful APIs work. So now, because it's trending these days, RESTful is trending. Google Web Services using REST API is trending also. Amazon Web Services is there also, and there are many different things which are trending these days, right? Because I don't want to spend more time in developing applications, or scientists and companies and businesses are not interested in giving you ample amount of time so that you can develop applications, right? So they want quick applications, secure applications, and as that of we can say reliable and durable, sustainable web applications, and that's why we use Spring, right, for quick development and for dependency injections. Now, what dependency injection is, you can see right here, no dependency injection is applied. What we are doing, we are increasing the dependency here by calling two functions just to call it draw method, right? So now what we can do, we can coop up this thing, right? This thing can be minimized. The dependency here can be minimized if we apply polymorphism, right? So in case of polymorphism, let me document it here and let me show you what we do in polymorphism. All right, so let's apply polymorphism here. Okay, now we will make an interface known as shape. So let's say that we have an interface known as shapes, all right, and the shape has draw method. All right, so just to reduce the dependency and memory, we can say garbage collection and everything related to memory, what we can do right here, if we are having this interface draw, and then we have two classes, right? One is triangle, all right? So I'll just copy this and paste this here. All right, so we have two more classes now. One class is known as circle, all right, as you are aware of that, and another class is known as triangle, right? So now let's consider these two classes. Circle is there and triangle is also there. So now both the classes can implement draw function from shape. So I can say draw. Now this is where we are applying polymorphism, right? What happens? Both are inheriting or implementing the draw method from this shapes class. So this is called polymorphism. Now if you want to draw, what you do is like this. You would go ahead and say shapes s equals new. Now you'll call the shapes and say shapes is equal to new triangle. All right, and then you can say s dot draw, and in case you want to draw a circle, you will use the same thing right here as well. So this is how you can apply polymorphism. So now here you can say is equal to new circle and say circle s2, so it's called this shape 2 dot draw, right? Or you can say shape as well, so it says fine. So now we can see that we have applied polymorphism, but still applying polymorphism is going to reduce that dependency, but it's not going to be completely applying dependency injection that Spring method does. Right now, again, what you can do method parameters, you can apply getters and setters, and you can apply different things, right? So now this object creation is a big problem here, right? Because if you go from class 1 to class B, the object is not going to be available here. For example, if I go to class, if I go to my application class, so the circle class will not be available there, right? I'll have to create an object of the circle class, right? I'll have to follow and create, the objects everywhere. So that is going to be the main problem that we have to rectify in Spring. Now what Spring has basically, Spring has something known as a Spring container. Right, so Spring has something known as Spring container, right? And what does it take? Spring container, right? Contains Spring's objects. So Spring container will take objects. So that means whenever I require any object of any class, I'll say, hey Spring container, give me the object of class B. Hey Spring container, give me the object of class T, rather than making objects myself and increasing that dependency every time I require any class. For example, I require database object of the database connection class. So do I have to make an object? No, I'll go to Spring container and say Spring container, please give me object of ABC class. Now what does Spring container take? Spring container can have objects, right? And we can also have objects outside the SC, which is Spring container. Yeah, we can have also objects outside the Spring container, and we can ask Spring container, and we can make or we can call classes or make ask Spring container for all the objects, right? But doesn't mean that we cannot have in Spring, we cannot have objects outside the container. Yes, we can surely have objects inside the container and outside the container. And unlike servlets, the Spring container contains and handles the instantiation of objects, lifecycle of objects, and handles the destruction of objects. Just like we have seen servlets, and we have seen the container in servlets, which manages of the full life cycle of a servlet, from the construction of the servlet and the destruction of the servlet. Now what we are having here is the Spring container, and it is also going to maintain every single thing, right? So we are going to have two different things. Now how do you do that? How do you achieve it practically, right? If in practicality I tell you, right, you want to achieve this particular thing, right? And how do you do that, right? So for that, if you want to practically achieve, we have something known as factory. right? So you'll always, in Spring, you'll always find Spring Bean Factory, right? And Spring Bean Factory is always going to be called for objects. So whenever you require any object, so you are going to be calling for objects. So instead of calling a new object, it will reference a bean factory, and the factory will read from the XML file. So we'll see that practically. Right, so it's not like we don't have to see that practically. Let me first show you the practical, and while understanding the practical, will we be able to understand the theoretical, right? So let me close this down. And to create a Spring application, I'll go to new project, Java Web, I'll say web application, and I will create here SAPP, Spring app. SAP means Spring app, and you can name anything, right? And then click next, next. And now then you can see that we have Spring Web MVC framework right here. Right, can you see this Spring Web MVC? Right, so we are going to use 4.0.1 framework of Spring. If you want to include GSTL, say okay, fine, I want to include GSTS as well. Go ahead and include GSTL and click finish. GSTL is calling Spring by the JavaScript tags library. You already are aware of JavaScript tags library. I don't have to tell you. And now this is our Spring Bean, right? Or we can say this is our dispatcher servlet. Alright, so this is what we call as dispatcher servlet. And if I go inside the project, I'll see I have many libraries here. I have application context, I have web.xml. Now what is happening in web.xml? Now you can see that context param is being applied. We are applying interceptor. So now what happens? That we are applying listener, which is org Spring Framework context load listener, and we are calling. So that means anything when you type in URL of star.htm, right? So any URL with htm extension, when you are typing this, you are doing servlet mapping. You're already aware of servlet mapping, right? All right. So any URL that you are typing with star.htm extension will be redirected to this dispatcher servlet. Now what this dispatcher servlet does, takes help from, dispatches you to the Spring Framework. I repeat, whenever you type any STM extension, you are going to get redirected to Spring Framework, and you must have welcome file. Welcome file is redirect.jsp. So let me quickly run this program and see what's happening at the background, so that we can quickly make a bean and start referencing the bean and understand what a dependency injection is, right? Okay, since now we have started the project, it's going to take a while. No, it has loaded quickly. Fine, so let it load. Yeah, hello, this is the default welcome page for the Spring Web MVC project. So we understand it, and the file is index.htm. But yeah, wait a second, what happened? Because welcome file list you're already aware of, is something that you want when you load your web application. Now if I go directly to this redirect.jsp, so let me go to redirect.jsp and see what it actually does. So we have JSPs, all the JSPs will reside inside this GSP folder. But wait a second, we have this redirect.jsp here. So let me delete the comments. What is happening here? Nothing. Response.send redirect to index.htm. It's directly sending response.redirect to index.htm. And do I have index.htm file? No, I do not have index.htm. What I have here is only index.jsp file. So we'll have to understand it. Now, why is it that if I have index.jsp file, but in the URL I'm typing index.htm, and despite of it being index.jsp file, why are we using htm extension? You can see this here. Hello, this is a default welcome page for Spring Web MVC project. Yeah, you can see this. To display a different welcome page, you can say you can modify it. So let us modify it right from here. So I'll modify this JSP file. I'll say hello world. Alright, so now we can see, okay, now this is the actual file that's being loaded. Now the only difference or the only thing that basically we have to take care of and understand is that what happens once a welcome file list is loaded. Welcome file list contains a file that is going to be fired as soon as you start your application without typing the name of any other file. For example, if I type it here, I don't type anything here, you can say I'm redirected back to index.html. So that is not necessary as well. I can even just delete this line right here and type hello here. Right, so now we can see that we are getting actually the welcome file list is giving us this basic file which is a redirect.jsp, or you can call index.htm directly. Right, so you can go ahead and say I want index.htm file. Right, so you can directly now you can say you can directly go and index.htm file is loaded, or you can type index.htm directly. Yeah, it is loaded. So now what is the fun of redirecting and doing every single thing? Now, and what is it that we have a JSP file? For example, if I another JSP file, for example, contact. Right, so it's a JSP file. Right, so now what if I do? I type contact.htm. I'll get 404 not found. But what if I type contact.jsp? I'm not getting anything. But the contact.jsp is there. It is inside the folder webinf, and inside webinf I'm having JSP. So you cannot directly access this. Since I know this, I cannot be, context.jsp cannot be directly accessed, but it has to be accessed with this extension, then HTM. But no, even HTM extension is not working. For that, we'll have to go back to dispatcher servlet and take a look at what is happening here. Now you can see right here, you have bean ID URL mapping, right? So you're making index.htm and calling it index controller. So let me make another property mapping. So now I made another property, and I know that this is again going to be mappings, right? And I make another property here, or I can go in the same way and make the property, okay? But now I'm calling this index controller. Let's call this contact. Let's call this contact controller, right? So now anything that you type over the URL with an HTML extension, now go back to welcome page, right? After welcome file list has executed. Now anything that you type which has a .htm extension, right, will go to dispatcher. This is the deployer name internal secret, right? And dispatcher is actually taking help from dispatcher server to dispatch all the requests back to the Spring container, right? So this is what is happening, that anything with HTML extension will be redirected to the Spring container. Now to take care of the Spring container, I go to dispatcher servlet. I say, okay, now I'll make another property, right? Or let me go ahead and make another property in here. For example, we already have one property prop, so let me make another, and this is called as contact controller. Now you can see that what is view resolver doing? The view resolver is doing nothing but taking all the directories, taking all the .jsp files which are inside web.inf. Now let's go and check. Yeah, web.inf has a JSP folder. Yes, it has a JSP folder, and all the files inside JSP folder are with as date of JSP extension. Yes, they are with JSP extension, which is contact.jsp and index.jsp. Absolutely no problem. Now what you are doing here is you're calling this index controller, and you're viewing, or you are giving the view as name index, right? So once you type index, right, view resolver is going to go to the JSP folder and resolve whether that index is there, and it is going to take the extension HTM instead of. So it is basically the view resolver here which is resolving the extension. Now for example, if I require another so let's call this now index, which is the contact controller. All right, so I'm telling that it is contact controller and the view name is contact. So let us see what happens now. Right, if I type only contacts, I'll have to basically restart it because it's an XML change. Okay, we still have an error right here, so I'll have to resolve it. Let me do one thing. Let me make another URL mapping. Okay, So now we have two URL mappings, props. Okay, single property is okay. Now the first property that we are using for URL mapping is index.htm, and the second property I'm using is still index.htm. So I'll say contact. Contact.htm is going to fire the contact controller, right? And I'm calling the contacts controller and using the view name that is contact. So let me run it once again and see whether it will be able to deploy or not. Fine. It's as simple as anything. Alright, so it's still getting build failed. So I'll go to web application and see whether I've done something wrong. Okay, I'll have to use redirect once again. And I go to dispatcher servlet and type rename my welcome file back to redirect and JSP, and now say contact.jsp. So we will not be able to resolve it. I know that it's not going to get resolved unless we understand controllers, because what we can see, we'll have to understand many different things in here. We have this contact.jsp and index, but we have application context and we have dispatcher servlet. So far what we have done, we've done everything right in dispatcher servlet, so we don't need to do anything more in dispatcher servlet. Now if I go to application context, now you can see inside application context, right, so there is nothing in here. Alright, so this is where we are going to add all our dependencies. Right, so this is where all the dependencies will fall, and this is from where we are going to take control of everything. So this is again the index controller right here. Okay, and we can say it's a parameterized view controller, and it is contact, and the name is index. Okay, and we have made another property as contact controller. Right, why is it like this? Alright, so let me view it again. We have some error here. Okay, client URL is not resolved, right? So let me basically delete this and try back. Yeah, fine. So this way it's working absolutely fine. Alright, so this is just to make you guys understand. Index.htm contact.htm will not come. You'll understand why. So first I'll have to show you all the dependencies, and then we'll go ahead and learn what is context and what are the different things, right, that we'll have to take care of. Okay. Okay, now this is your bean. Now what I was about to tell you, that we may require a file known as beans. So let me go ahead and say I may require, I'll go to other and say spring. So you can say spring XML configuration file. So I'll click next and let's call this spring spring config. So I call it spring config, and I'll make sure. Right, so this is my spring config, and the spring config will be inside the default package. So I've taken it to the default package, right? So let me quickly go and show you what we learned using MS Paint, the triangle and the circle, right? So let me do that. So for example, I'll go with beans tag. So I'll say beans, right? So I can have as many beans as I want here, all right? Okay, Java class, and you know, it can say that you're calling it class as well. So now let us say bean. I give it an ID, so I'll say bean ID is equivalent to triangle, right, and class, right, is equivalent to let me make class quickly inside this. So I'll go to source package and I will say new Java class, and let us call this class as triangle, triangle, and in source packages, so I don't want to waste. Now this is my triangle class, and it has a function as we saw earlier, public void draw, right? So now we have a function public void draw. So I can use system.out.println, and I can say triangle draw. That's it, because we have to understand dependency, so we don't have to create a big project. We're still understanding basics in here. All right, now bean ID is equivalent to triangle, class is equivalent to, now the class name is triangle, right? Isn't it? Yeah. So I call the triangle class, and it is the self-closing bean. Now what I got to do here is something like this, okay? Because since I know that I have called this class now, right, and now I have basically made a reference to this class. I'm still going to call the class, right? We still have to remember that we have to call the class, and we have to make sure that we are not creating an object of the class. We are asking the Spring container to give us that object of class, and many different things that we have already discussed before the start of the class, right? And we are going to apply that, right? And now let me show you something right here. For example, this is our index.jsp. So now we know that we are going to get redirected to this index.jsp, right? So we are going to maybe do rest of the things inside index.jsp only, fine. Or we are going to create any, let's say, about any public static void main function, wherein we are going to apply this practically, okay? Or let's do one thing. Let me go to index.jsp, and let me quickly show you a demonstration inside the body section. So let me have scriptlets. All right, so now we're having scriptlets, and let me do one thing here. Bean factory. So I know that if I go to Spring container, you have to call bean factory. Right, so I'll say bean factory. Okay, now you can see an object of bean factory is here. It is depreciated, but I'll show you both the ways. So I'll say bean factory is equivalent to new. Now you can say new XML bean factory. Now you're calling a new XML bean factory, right? And you are going to call a new file system resource. So I'll say file system resource, which is nothing but the name of your spring.xml file. So what did we call that? It is spring-config.xml. So I'll say spring config.xml. Now we're asking Spring container, right, about the object. So we don't have to create an object of every single thing. Just one object is sufficient to give us any different thing that we want. Right, so I repeat, now you can see it here. We are asking factory to give us bean factory, which is depreciated because we use application context now, which I will show you also. So bean factory is equal to new XML bean factory and a new file system resource. And now this is the call that's being made to Spring config that we have just made. Spring config is right here, and you are calling the Spring config. Okay, now that's done. Now what we need to do is we need to say that Spring config is going to, I'm asking Spring config about a class name that is triangle, right? And we have to call the function draw out of the triangle, right? So we have to understand this, that bean factory, I'll say triangle, right? Triangle is equal to, look, I'll not use new keyword here. I'll say factory dot get bean. I'll simply say factory.getBean. Which bean are you targeting? The ID of the bean. If I go ahead, it has one bean, which is triangle, targeted to the triangle class. Now you can easily see that I say, give me, hey factory, would you please give me an instance of triangle class? Now we're asking the Spring container. Yeah, we know that it's going to give us as Spring bean, which is yet to be typecasted to triangle. So I can easily go and typecast this to triangle. And we can say triangle. And the object name T. So we have not used new here. And yet we are able to access anything. T.draw. I can see that I'm calling T.draw here. So the moment I run this index.x, now you can see now. The moment I run it, let me see this. Bean factory is equal to new XML bean factory, which is the resource spring config.xml, and spring config.xml has it has a new bean. Okay, right, which is in the default package. So we don't have any problem. So I'll say spring spring, or let me copy paste. Maybe at times we have that spelling mistake. So I will say rename, and I will copy this right here, spring config.xml, save it, and go back to your index, which is causing some kind of exception right here. Generated servlet error. Okay, it's obsolete and it will be removed in the future. I know that this is obsolete. I told you before we get started with this, right? At the start, I told you that XML Bean Factory is now obsolete. What we do instead of XML Bean Factory, we use application context, right? So you can say application context, and we can name this context. Context is equal to new class path class path. So class path XML is equal to new. So I'll have to call the application context first, right? Okay, so let me do it this way. All right, so have we imported application context? Yeah, application context is already here. So I can say spring, okay, why are we doing bean factory? Okay, I'll have to do application context, or call this context is equal to new, not application context and interface. So I'll say new class, new class path resource, or we can say class path class, C is capital, class is class path XML. Now we can see, yeah, we have it here, class path XML application context, and we are calling spring config.xml. Right, so let me terminate and check it. Right, now we are going to ask context to give us the bean, right, and we are typecasting, right, because it's obsolete. That's why we were getting this warning. So let me try again. Right, so we are not getting, so we obsolete, generated server error, value 1 for Jasper expect exception. It is not valid and it is depreciated. Let me see the output first. Yeah, build is successful, and we have been able to retrieve error file not found, Spring Framework schema P. So let me run it again for you. Alright, so we don't have any exception. It is running as expected. Right, and everything else is fine. Uses to override depreciated, generated servlet error. So we are not using absolutely no obsolete thing. So using context.getBean triangle, and we are calling triangle.draw. So let me see where the exception comes first, right? Whether it's here or okay, the application is here. So it is basically triangle T. So let me see that application context is called. Yeah, application context is called. If I give some wrong name, okay, you can see that we are getting 404. And let me wait. Yeah, we can see that exactly. Right, it does not exist. Spring something does not exist. So now if I give the right name, spring config, now we can see that it does exist, right? Absolutely fine. So far we don't have any problem, but now we call triangle T is equal to T context.getBean triangle. Now if I go to this triangle inside beans and see the ID is triangle, right, and the class is also triangle. So let me take this class inside some package and check whether it works. So let me go and make another package. So I'll call this as bean just for the sake, and I'll take this triangle inside this and I'll say refactor. Fine. So I'll say beans beans, and I'll say beans dot, okay, is it small beans? Yeah, beans dot triangle, triangle, so it's beans dot triangle. So now if I go back to my index and say triangle T. Yeah, you can clearly see now. We have to import the package, which is triangle beans. So now it's absolutely fine. Let me see that we have any exception or not. Save it, and yeah, no exception at all. So we had to take it in a different package. All right, so let me see whether we're able to get anything. So we still, let me do one thing right here. So let me make a public string draw. All right, instead of system.out.println, now what you can do, I can return. All right, so I'll say return triangle drawn. Fine, no problem at all. And now here in index.jsp, what I will do, I'll say out.print t.draw, because t.draw is now as that of type string, so it's of type string, triangle drawn, so it's absolutely fine. I can say triangle, the triangle is now drawn. Okay, let's see, triangle drawn, right? So now what we have been able to successfully achieve so far, let me give you the rough again, or let me recap all and revise all what we have understood. We've understood that now Spring is used for dependency injections. We'll have to first make a Spring container, and how would you know what is inside the Spring container is having the Spring beans file. And what we are going here, we are giving reference of all the classes here. For example, if I have another class, right, let me create another class here. So I'll say copy and I'll say paste circle. Let's call this circle. Now we have circle class and we have the same draw method here of the circle, right? So I can say return circle drawn. So this circle class has a simple method which is of type Spring, right, and which takes back this string, the string sentence circle drawn. So it's taking string as circle drawn. Now I'll make the reference of bean here, right, which is going to be the ID circle. Please keep beans in a different package so that it does not create any exceptions. And I'll say beans dot, what was the class name here? CIRCLE circle. So I'm creating a reference inside the container. I say the actual ID is circle, and whenever you call circle, I'm going to give you an object of beans.circle. So now I'll go to my file where I need to call this from, which is nothing but index.jsp. Right, I can also say please give me an object of circle, CIRCLE circle. Right, and once you give me an object of circle, right, typecast it to circle, convert it back because the type is circle. Alright, and you can say circle C, and then we can say C.draw. Now you can notice one thing here. Once you make an application context object, you don't have to make all the objects. For example, what if I have to call both? Right, in that case, for example, I have to call both of them. So one is triangle and another is a circle. So what if I have to call both? Now we're calling both here, right? You can clearly see that we're calling both here. Alright, and you can see clearly here circle C is equal to circle context dot get beans circle, and out.println C.draw triangle T is equal to circle Y circle triangle. So I'll say triangle, and I can say triangle dot draw. Alright, so we have to convert this to triangle since circle cannot be converted to triangle. So TRIANGLE. Now you can see both of them that we're not creating an object of class circle, we're not creating an object of class triangle. We're asking, right, the context to please give me an instance of circle, and we're asking the same context to give me an instance of triangle. Right, once I get an instance, the instance will be of type Spring, because you're asking it from Spring container. It will be as that of type maybe XML or anything like that. What now you are doing, you're converting it back to circle and giving it back to circle, converting it back to triangle and giving it back to triangle. Right, so you're not creating an object. Say about the project demands creation of 200 objects. So all 200 objects will be asked from the context file here. That is the basic functionality of Spring. It's not what Spring is all about. Now you can see circle is drawn, and now you can see even triangle is also drawn. Right, so now we can even use that shape, and we have constructor injection, we have very different type of injections right here. But what I want you to try, I know that you're not going to get initially because it is the class 1 of Spring, right? So you're not going to get everything initially. Maybe even if you're understanding 40 to 50%, I'll give it a thumbs up, right? And I'll say 50% is also very good, but you're going to understand each and everything as we get move ahead with the classes. Maybe not today, but with concurrent classes you are going to get each and everything. And but till then you need to be patient and watch all the lectures and complete this practical today. Go and create a new Spring project, and go for a new Spring XML file and try this simple experiment of asking the Spring configuration file about the objects and typecasting them and then using them as well, right? And I repeat, you need to be patient. You'll slowly and steadily understand each and everything and start developing not only the basic applications but also complex applications. So we will be taking it for 6 days or maybe 5 days Spring, and then we'll quickly jump into Spring Boot, because Spring Boot requires some knowledge or some basic knowledge of Spring. Right, so once you get that knowledge of Spring and how to work with dispatcher and how to work with application context, only then we can start developing applications with Spring Boot quickly and steadily, right? And let me take a look at time. So it's already been over 40 minutes. So I want you guys to practice, because practicing in these days, or maybe the lockdown, can be a blessing in disguise for you guys, right? So I want you guys to practice very hard and tell me tomorrow, and you can let me know in the comment section if I can help you, or message me personally. Till then, take care and see you tomorrow, 4:30 p.m. Bye-bye. Take care.